This program was made possible in part by a grant from Florida Public Broadcasting Service, Incorporated.
I look at it this way. I've been number one for 16 years. When the record is broken, I'll be number two.
When you said, are you going to be there this summer?
I hope so.
Let me ask you, I mean, really, I mean, when that event comes up, what are you feeling in here?
Well, the thing is that
Director of Metro-Dade County Sports and Recreation Department. Talented Tallahassean Mary Marshall does just about everything but lay the egg. Her intricate egg creations have earned her a national reputation. Gino Cavaceppi's reputation has been growing since his childhood, when he began making and restoring cellos and violins. The Alachua resident is still at it today, only now he performs on the instruments he creates. FSU performance major Marthaniel Roberts is recognized as one of this country's most promising jazz musicians. The Jacksonville native recently returned from concerts in New York and Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. We'll meet the 22-year-old blind pianist on this week's Southern Circuit Journey. Stay with us.
it was all me and coming off that board perfect to hit the perfect jump at the perfect time in the perfect place. And it happened.
What happened is the most outstanding single achievement in Olympic history. Bob Beeman, a 6-foot 2-inch kid from a New York tenement who had never jumped more than 27 feet 4 inches before, hit the takeoff board in Mexico City's 1968 Olympics. And when he touched the ground again, he had sailed 29 feet 2.5 inches, a full 2 feet farther than anyone had ever jumped before.
All of a sudden, a friend of mine and teammate says to me, "You've just jumped 29 feet." And I took one step forward, and I turned around, and I asked him again, and he said 29 feet. And from that time on, I don't remember too much after that.
The next jump Bob took was to establish a career for himself. That eventually brought him to Miami, where he works as Director of Sports Development for the Metro-Dade County Parks and Recreation Department. Bob's devoted his life to athletics, coaching, and occasionally serving as a consultant to the athletic endeavors of foreign countries.
I'd like to personally welcome all of you to the second 1984 Partners International Athletic Coaches Clinic.
I get a big joy out of giving back my knowledge to the communities for either personal gains in terms of understanding the sport itself, or actually socializing with others, whether it's a national program or an international program. It serves that goal or that purpose that we all need to understand each other better. The communication gaps are so distant that we have brought together people internationally and nationally to a better understanding and exposing kids to national and international flavors of programs for sports. And we've done a super job in getting that exposure to the kids. We start out at 8 years old, and we'll go all the way up to open divisions in running or swimming or whatever. And I think that kind of exposure is necessary. that kind of situation should be created more, not only in Miami, but around the country. Sports have done so much for many of us athletes that we are wide open in terms of understanding more.
That's it. That's it.
Show off. Show off.
We have many peak experiences in our life, and I can say that for Bob Beamon, the long jump was a very beautiful peak experience. Maslow says that we do have many peak experiences, and I would not like to compare that with my business or with my personal life. I'd like to say that one day that I would like to have an ultimate peak experience in my professional life, such as become president of a multi-million-dollar organization or corporation, whatever it might be. And I'd like to be a part of making that happen. That will be another peak experience. And then one day I would like to have a peak experience in finding a marriage situation that we can both be compatible in, and that will be a peak experience in having children.
You know, back in the '68 Summer Games, I set a world's record in the long jump. And a lot of people said that no one would ever jump that far again. Well, over the years, I've really enjoyed sitting back with my light beer from Miller and watching them try. And now I see that there's a kid around who's pretty good. Well, if he thinks he's going to beat Bob Beamon's record, I just got one thing to say to him. I hope you make it, kid.
Records are made to be broken, and mine is no different. And I look forward to someone one day surpassing it, duplicating or surpassing the record. If that does happen, I look at it this way. I've been #1 for 16 years. When the record is broken, I'll be #2.
She claims she's not an artist, but one look at her work suggests otherwise. For the past 15 years, Tallahassean Mary Marshall has been creating her exquisite art from that everyday favorite, the egg.
I never knew I could do anything with my hands except grade English papers until I got mixed up in this foolishness. My degree was in English literature, and therefore I have never had any training in what I do. And I'm very grateful to the people that have tried to help me learn. When I first started out, we used things like food coloring out of the kitchen, braids, sequins out of my mother's sewing box. We used glitter dust, we used tapioca, would you believe? We used food coloring and the simplest of braids, anything. We went to the dime stores and got little Christmas figures. Now, except for rinsing at the sink, it's nice and clean. We would like for people to know that it is an art, and all of us who are eggers have tried to promote that idea, that eggery is an art. It's not just pasting a few sequins and beads on eggs and stringing them on Christmas trees. There's a great deal, though that's part of the fun of it too, there's a great deal more to it than just that. I jokingly say that that's the way I get rid of my impatience, because you can't be mad at anybody and work on an eggshell. And if I had some frustrating experiences while I was working, something that I couldn't make come out like I wanted it to, then I'd come home at night and sit down, and in 30 minutes, Mother said she'd hear me whistling or humming, and that whatever frustrations I had long since disappeared. But I suppose you'd say it takes steady hands, and I would say mainly desire, perhaps curiosity, and certainly some creativity. The eggs that we use come from different sources. Now and then, someone will get an unfertile egg from a zoo, but most of the eggs, the exotic ones that we buy, have been pen raised. Egg artists do not use the wild bird eggs because, first of all, we're bird lovers, and second, it is against the law. But I do a lot of ostrich eggs, a lot of rhea eggs, some of the emu eggs. But I use everything on down to the homely little chicken egg, and sometimes they are strange-looking things indeed. The hens at the beginning or the end of a cycle will lay these wild-looking shapes sometimes. Here's one that looks very much like a pear. Shakespeare had one of his characters say, "We are as alike as two eggs." And I know Shakespeare knew a great deal about a lot of things, but he did not know anything about eggs, because there are no two eggs the same shape and size. You can measure and measure and measure, and you're not going to find them exactly the same size. People often ask me which is my favorite egg, and I suppose I have several that are, but this particular one I'm proud of because it incorporates so many of the techniques that are used by egg decorators. There are limitations for me because, as I said, I have not had drawing, sketching. I suppose I ought to try to take some art lessons, but there's not time. There's not enough time in the day now for me to do all the things I want to do. When I retired, the one thing that I did not receive was enough time.
Do you spend most of your time working on the eggs?
No, I have a lot of other interests too. My garden, for one thing, my dog, for another, travel, my home. I like cooking. I love to cook. I would have to like to cook. Somebody has to use up those eggs.
I was there as a child when I felt interest for making something, you know. I was doing all kinds of little things and little furniture, and kind of doll furniture like you call them. And, but mainly what I wanted to do instruments, because the instruments, when they are made, you know, they have a sound. I was in love with the violin. I was in love with the instrument because it was different, had something more logical in the way it was built than any other instruments. When I was about 10 years old, I said, well, I have to start making some instruments. I always heard about the instrument needs to be made with aged wood. So my mother had a chest of drawer. Actually, she got it from her mother. It was very old. I moved the chest of drawer and took the back out. You know, the back at the time was not made of plywood. It was made of wood. And my mother, one day, trying to open the chest of drawer, and the chest of drawer was doing like this because, you know, part that holds the furniture together is the back. I said, what's wrong with this chest of drawer? It's really old now. Well, one day she found out, actually this is my second instrument, and I use that wood to make this mandolin. And when she saw this, she said, that wood looks familiar. He said, that probably came from the chest of drawer. So she got mad and she took everything apart. And I started crying and crying and crying and crying. Well, she came back maybe after, I don't know, 10 minutes, you know. And she was crying too. She said, oh, I'm sorry. And she said, I did something I shouldn't have done because that may be something important for your life. I said, please forgive me and do it again. So I did again, and the mandolin is still here. Many years have passed. I'm 53 now, so it was about 41 years ago.
That you made when you were 10 years old?
12.
Can you play it?
Well, there are some strings missing. Well, the sound is pretty good. I'm not a mandolin player. I was 16 years old when I made my first bass. Some people are born with something, no? Like, for example, the people that are 10 or 12 years old and they can play the piano and even the violin so well. I think they are born with it. I don't know how. When I make a violin, I want to see the perfection and cleanness of work, not sloppy, you know, and the scroll that is perfectly carved look like a scroll, not a square or whatever. It's supposed to be round. The Italian tradition is to make a violin that is not shaded, has a uniform varnish. Then we'll get shaded with the edge. But they are made in the way that when the varnish gets worn on the top, underneath is even more beautiful. And this is what I do with my instrument. Now they may look a little reddish, but when the wood underneath gets dark, then the color will change, and the reflection of the wood will come out better. It may take 100 years. Of course, in 100 years the sound will be better. Don't think that Stradivari made the best sounding instrument at the time, you know, whatever. They always say the secret of Stradivari and this and that. There was no secret, just good workmanship and to know how. And then the time did the most. I'm sure with the knowledge now you can put trunks of trees on one side of a machine, have violins falling down at the other end. But, well, I don't think this instrument will survive centuries.
22-year-old Marthaniel Roberts of Jacksonville is a junior at Florida State University's School of Music. Under the name Marcus Roberts, he's recognized as one of the most promising jazz performers in the country. His accomplishments include winning the Billy Taylor National Jazz Piano Competition and the privilege of performing at Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C.
It was my mother's idea because, I was a pretty obnoxious kid, and I would, every time Christmas would come around and you'd get all these neat toys, and I was very curious, and after a while, I'd start to wonder how these things worked, and I'd take them apart, and of course, I never could quite put them back, the way they were when they first purchased them from the store, but I mean, finally, I think more out of desperation, there's got to be something this kid can do, so she just decided to get the piano, and my dad thought she was nuts, but she said, well, if he can't do anything with it, we can take it back, and I don't think he'll be able to tear a piano apart. So they got it, and I immediately became interested, and I started to work on my own for 4 years, which had its advantages because obviously I learned everything by ear and just by listening, which is what music is all about anyway. But the problem that occurred with that was this question of having the correct hand position and knowing how to use your fingers to get the most out of the piano. And this was something that I didn't get. Partially because, like I say, I was on my own, and also because, like when you'd see a great artist on television, it's like I couldn't see what he was doing. So that I had no concept as to how other people played the piano, only my way, so that I didn't start studying until I was 13, which is very late, and by then I had developed some very bad habits, which to this day, it's like I'm just now starting to get over them.
Yes, but still, the position of your hand, maintain it always here. La ra 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 di ra di ra ra. Don't do this. Maintain the leverage here, huh?
The main thing I want to do with my music is hopefully one day have it compared to such great people's music as Miles Davis or Charlie Parker or any of these people that have just shaped what the art of jazz is now. So that I don't want my music to be flash in the pan type of stuff, which is why I'm working very hard to try to refine my technique classically, because that's my weakest point. So that if you make your weakest point as strong as your strongest point, that'll just add that extra touch to what you're trying to do.
Well, I think he has a very promising future. He has been already in several major jazz festivals, and he has been able to stir enough excitement with his performances to predict a bright future. In the arts, you cannot guarantee anything. I don't think you can guarantee anything in any career. A lot of effort and self-discipline and study must go into it. And Mark, of course, in the short time that he has been studying with me, he has done a tremendous progress. So I could say that the rate of progress is going to continue until he achieves a total, I wouldn't say total, there is never a total mastery, but until he achieves a level, a professional level that will enable him to go out on stage and be compared with anybody who is anybody.
It gives you a chance to express who you are. And I mean, it's like everybody has a different way to do that. You know, Herschel Walker does it by running and scoring 30 touchdowns a game. You know, other people do it in other ways. But it's like, with me, music is that way, and I love it. And that's about the only way that you can cope with the discipline that's required, because you have to love it. If you don't, you'll quit. And there have been times when I have felt like quitting, but it's, you know, the best way to test yourself is to just sit there and really think, well, can I picture myself doing anything else? And I'd think about it, and I'd go, no, I couldn't.
That concludes Southern Circuit. We want to thank you for joining us on our 13 journeys throughout Florida. We hope you enjoyed meeting our neighbors as much as we did. And we hope we'll have the opportunity to meet you sometime when we continue our travels on Southern Circuit. Until then, from all of us, take care.
This program was made possible in part by a grant from Florida Public Broadcasting Service, Incorporated.